Well, growing up a generation ago was very different than it is for kids today. And certainly social media has had both a positive and negative impact on our kids. We see too many young people who become couch potatoes or even game chair potatoes, as I say, and don't know how to communicate without a device. But we're also seeing kids who are becoming world changers. So, how can we influence our children to be in that latter camp? Well, joining us to discuss this is Dr. Tim Elmore. He's the author of 35 books, including his newest release. It's the he's the best-selling author of I Can't Wait, 52 Stories of Kids Who Changed Their World that you can read together. He's also the founder and CEO of Growing Leaders and has spoken to 500,000 business leaders, universities, athletes, and nonprofits. Wow. He joins me now from Atlanta, Georgia. Dr. Elmore, welcome back to Bridge City News. You are a busy, busy guy.
Well, you're busy as well, but yeah, I'm not getting bored these days, that's for sure.
Right? Okay, so you do a lot, but let's talk about your latest book. So, what inspired you to write I Can't Wait? Is this strictly for children?
No, not at all. In fact, it's something kids can benefit from, but I really thought about families, maybe even teachers in a classroom, maybe even a coach on a field, but it's 52 stories, so one a week for a whole year that you can begin to talk about kids with your kids who did something amazing to solve problems and serve people. But I thought because it's harder and harder for moms and dads to connect with their kids at 13 years old, let's say, and the kids, as you mentioned, Jeanette, are often very much at home with a screen, but not face to face with another person. I thought, what if we told redemptive stories, had a discussion, a conversation that might inspire your kid on that sofa, maybe, to get up and do something themselves with their gifts. So that's my goal. Yeah.
No, definitely. The sofas, the gaming chairs, let's get those kids out there. So, considering your years of experience in developing and equipping leaders, so how would you say the current generation of children differs these days from previous generations?
Well, one obvious one is they have a very high sense of agency. And what I mean by that is they feel very empowered, probably by a smartphone. I feel like I know it all and I'm 12, that sort of thing. And sometimes they do, it's amazing. But along with that high sense of agency, Jeanette, there's a high sense of anxiety. They're often overwhelmed with all that they consume on that smartphone. So it's oxymoronic, high agency, high anxiety. Yeah, both were deepened by smartphones. But here's the good news. It's not all negative. Sometimes a kid can get on a screen or the internet and they find a problem in their own community that they could do something about. So let me tell you one of the stories that just illustrates what I'm saying.
Okay.
Virgil, a few years ago, was in the eighth grade, 13 years old. He was playing video games with his friend Kashan one night, late one night, when both boys heard a loud clap outside the window. Now, they're in the same apartment complex, but not the same apartment.
Oh,
That's how we can play video games these days.
right.
But they heard this loud noise. They looked out the front window and they saw that a storm was coming in. But they both assumed it wasn't that bad. Well, they were wrong. It was Hurricane Harvey. Remember that about 5 or 6 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Well, before he knew it, young Virgil, eighth grade, was up to his knees in water. The apartment was flooding.
Wow.
I love the fact, though, how Virgil responded. He didn't wait for an adult to do something, didn't wait for permission from an adult to do something. He grabbed his phone, he grabbed his mother, and he grabbed his older sister, and he ran them upstairs to get to a higher floor away from the rising waters. And to me, that would be an act of heroism, but it didn't stop there. When he gets upstairs, he gets a phone call from Kashan, his buddy, who says, Verge, we're drowning over here. We need help. Well, once again, Virgil springs into action. He didn't wait for an adult, he didn't wait for permission. Virgil runs right back downstairs to his flooding apartment, grabs an air mattress that he slept on at night, and he used it as a raft. And he paddled over to Kashan's apartment and he saved
What?
Kashan and his whole family back and forth, back and forth.
Oh.
Act of heroism number two. But Jeanette, it didn't stop there. As
Okay.
he's paddling, as he's paddling back and forth, you can imagine he's hearing the cries for help from other
Mm-hmm.
people in the apartment.
Yeah.
He spends the next several hours paddling back and forth, helping people. According to the police report the next day, Virgil Smith saved 17 lives that night.
Wow.
Yeah, he got an award in his city for, for his act of heroism, and his mother was praised for raising such a fine, brave young man.
Wow. Talk
Well,
about
I love
thinking.
stories like
Yeah.
that.
And he's just
Yeah,
thinking on his feet, too.
that's right. And I think kids in Generation Z and the Alpha generation are more apt to do this today. They have learned about something. I heard one senior in high school say, "My teachers are obsolete." And what he meant by that was not that wasn't being rude. He just thought, yeah, yeah, ouch. But he was simply saying, I think I can look up anything you're saying. So we need to empower this generation of kids. They don't need us for information, they need us for interpretation. And Virgil does this incredible thing at eighth grade that I don't think I would have done when I was 40. So anyway, I'll stop
Exactly.
there.
That's crazy. And it's true. You said something interesting there about you can look up anything. They just have to be careful about what they're looking up and what sources they're going to because, everything is out there. So Virgil Smith sounds amazing. He's one of the young people that we meet in the book. Anyone else that we can look forward
Oh,
to reading
yeah.
about?
Well, let me do a couple of quick ones that just might be fun for your listeners and viewers. Um, Jimmy grew up in the 20th century, so a few decades ago, and he was an odd little boy. He wasn't like the rest of the boys in the neighborhood. He didn't go out and play ball like the other boys were doing. And at first, his mom and dad said, "You need to get out there. You need to get out there." But they were noticing that he loved just playing in his room. Now, get this, with his socks. Yes. So they watched him and he was making them have personalities. And you know what mom and dad decided to do with Jimmy? They thought, well, you know what? He's got an imagination. Let's just get him more socks. Well, Jimmy became the man that you and I know as Jim Henson, created the Muppet.
Wow. Okay,
And
so
so
this
he
goes
made an,
way back.
yes, it does. But I love the fact that his mom and dad didn't say, you need to be like everybody else. They said, we're
Like,
going to fan your gifts into
stop
flame.
playing with your socks.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Which maybe what I would have said.
Right?
But
But
the
look what
point
it bred
was,
into.
yes. So he creates this industry. So that's another one. I love the story of Anne, though. Anne was a teenager and still is, but a few years ago, she was on Facebook with her pal who lived in the Philippines. They're interacting, and Anne says, "How you doing in school?" Her friend says, "Well, not so good. I'm flunking out." Well, Anne said, "Flunking out? You're smarter than I am. How can that be?" And Anne found out that her friend was failing because her house had no electricity. So when the sun went down, she couldn't do her homework. Well, Anne loved science. She had a science fair coming up, and she thought, I'm going to help my friend and submit a project. Anne invented a flashlight that's powered by the body heat from your hand, needs no batteries. And she created this. It actually works. She sent it over to her friend to help her friend, but she also won this incredible award for the science fair. She's now gone on to college, but I'm thinking, I don't think I would have even thought to do that. So, listeners, I know that most of what we hear about kids is negative. They're getting into trouble and their anxiety attacks. But, folks, there's some great things going on. And I think we need to tell these stories to inspire our kids whenever we can.
Absolutely. So, how can we as parents inspire our kids to have long term vision?
Yeah, well, I think it starts with conversations. I don't know what your experience is, but I think parents today are kind of, they feel this generation gap with their screenager and then them. But I'm thinking, what if dinner time once a week? What if bedtime? What if drive time? You just say, let's read one of those stories. And there's three discussion questions at the end of each story that you could talk over. And then there's even a link to a video you can watch about Virgil or Anne or Jimmy or whatever. But my hope is these narratives change inside their head, that the world can be changed by someone under 40, that sort of thing. So that's the beginning step. I think we begin that change by telling the right stories, not just kids today,
Yeah.
which is often what we do.
Right? Yeah.
I think those stories begin to reframe what we're thinking about what we can do for God in our world today. Yeah.
So, Dr. Tim, how can a parent maybe recognize leadership potential in a child?
Yeah, it's a great question and probably one that deserves an hour. Let me see if I can do it justice in 2 minutes. It's my belief that the world is full of two kinds of leaders, and every kid in the world fits into one of these two kinds. They're either a habitual leader or a
Hmm.
situational leader.
Okay, I was going to ask, are we
So,
born with it or can you teach it? Yeah.
yeah, so it's a little of both.
Hmm.
So the habitual leaders are those rare kids that are just natural born leaders. Whatever team they're on, whatever group they're in, they tend to take over. For 20 years, I worked for Dr. John Maxwell. I think John is a habitual leader. I think he came out of the womb telling the doctors and nurses what to do in the maternity ward. But I think that's maybe 1 out of 10. The other 9 out of 10 are what I call situational leaders.
Hmm.
That's what I am. And we're the people that would look in the mirror in the morning and go, I'm not really a great leader, but put us in the right situation, one that matches our gifts, our passions, our strengths. In that one zone, I kind of know what to do. I've never taken a class on it, but I'm comfortable. I'm confident. I have influence. We've all seen that little boy, perhaps that's a wallflower. Then we put him on the soundboard. He's come alive. What's happened here? So I think the job of us as caring adults is to help those kids find their situation. They don't even need a badge to lead. They just have influence. And that's what we're trying to build, a world of influencers that know how to solve problems and serve people.
Yeah.
That's our goal.
Yeah. So, how can parents, maybe and adults, use your book to motivate young people to harness their creativity? It's not always easy.
Yeah, yeah, and by the way, this is not a simple thing. Conversations are messy. Sometimes kids don't want to talk, but my hope for listeners and what viewers today is for the caring adults, whether you're a teacher, coach, parent, to get intentional this year. Let's get intentional. And by that, I simply mean let's put on the calendar. Once a week, we're going to tell a story. We're going to read a story. We're going to talk about it. We'll go back to life as normal the other days, but let's be intentional and redemptive at least once a week. I think we'll be surprised. Well, I'll tell you, I'll give you a story. We beta tested this book with several families here in the Atlanta area where I live. One little boy and girl, 12 and 10 years old, the family read one of the stories together at dinner time. The little girl said, "Give me that book." After they were done with one story, she read the rest of the stories over the weekend, started writing down her answers to the questions in the story, and now she's writing her own book. She's 11 now. And so I'm just thinking we can't plan the outcomes, but we can plan the inputs. What do we do? Well, we have a dinner on we have bedtime. If you're still tucking your kids in, have a bedtime. Once a week, we're going to do more than just tuck you in. We're going to talk about a story. So I know it's a simple step, probably deserves a better answer, Jeanette, but that's where I would start. Yeah.
That's interesting. And you mentioned she filled out all the questions. Your book does feature a question at the end of each short chapter. So why does it do this? Is it just to build that interaction to get the kids thinking?
Yeah, my goal is to start conversations, and I think you're a 99% chance of at least having a conversation. And then we watch what happens. Maybe a month later, that kid is on their school campus and they see another kid that's lonely or they see a need. And suddenly this story pops in their mind from Lucy or Anne or Jimmy or whatever. And they begin to take action instead of just sitting still and saying, what can I do about that? So, yeah, I really believe there are situational leaders in every one of our kids, if not natural leaders. And I think we don't see it that way. We often just think, well, I just want my kids to graduate, or I just want my kids to stay out of trouble, or I just want my kids to make good grades. That's
Right.
all good. But
Barely
there's
squeak
something
by.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Right.
Just get by. So.
We're almost out of time, but really quick, how did you decide which kids to feature in your book? That must have been so hard.
Oh, it was. And so I'm working on version 2 right now. But these 52 stories I picked, I wanted some from history to connect kids to the past, and then some from today. I wanted boys and girls, so there's equal number stories of boys and girls. I wanted different ethnicities, so there's brown, black, white. Because I wanted them to say, we've all got something to learn, we've all got something to teach. So that's how I kind of chose, and it was hard, but I just wanted everybody to find themselves in the book.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing your expertise with us today, Dr. Elmore. It was great having you on today and hearing about these young people that are just so amazing.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Absolutely. Dr. Tim Elmore is the founder of Growing Leaders and is the best selling author of I Can't Wait 52 Stories of Kids Who Changed Their World that you can read together.